mechanism that we think is important.
There is reason to be optimistic. This new CBDV-based drug is similar to one that's already been approved by the FDA to treat a severe form of epilepsy that shares some of the same symptoms that Dr. Hollander is studying. This new research could help cement what has largely been anecdotal support of using cannabis to treat autism.
Cannabis was once seen as something which is completely recreational. It has been very heavily sort of stigmatized over the years, and it's only very recently in our modern day that people have been looking into researching and using cannabis for its medicinal purposes. Today we're going to have a look at a video called Cannabis as a Natural Treatment for Autism. Not the most appetizing title, be it. I think it would be quite interesting to perhaps have a little bit of an insight into how people are using cannabis, I suppose, in terms of autistic people. Let's go for it.
I know you love cheese pizza.
Cheers.
Nate started taking medication for autism when he was around 5 years old. As Nate was getting into high school, the aggression levels just really started spiraling out of control. He randomly started running into other classrooms, punching people for nothing. It took 4 adult men in handcuffs to bring him down to the ground, cuff him, and restrain him. At that time, he was taking 18 pills.
Yeah, that sounds like an autism meltdown for me. I think some people, when they come into like particularly high school experiences or secondary school, as we say in the UK, like definitely a lot more sensory provoking than it was, or at least in my experiences personally. But if you haven't already watched the podcast of myself with Miyabi, I highly recommend either checking that out after we watch this video, because Miyabi and me were talking specifically, I think, of perhaps people who have relatively lower support needs. I think this individual perhaps has relatively sort of high support needs, so it'd be interesting to see what their experiences of it is like. Although I do want to put a big caveat there and say that it's going to be from obviously the lens of the parents, so perhaps not particularly their experience, I suppose, but their parents' experience.
Pills every single day, and it wasn't even helping. I started researching the medical marijuana states. We were able to come to California. I remembered seeing like the big neon cannabis leaf in the window, and like, well, that's got to be where we have to go.
Why don't you just tell me a little bit about your family?
Marijuana moms.
Okay. My name is Jenny May. I have 3 sons on the autism spectrum. Each child is, of course, so different, like any other child. And as far as them being on the spectrum, Nathan is what is considered to be at the very severe end. And rather than trying to find the right medication, they just gave more and more and more of it. And that was really the only solution they had. I did not want...
Yeah, the wording is not incredibly... I can imagine not the best for you guys, but I think what she's trying to say is that he probably has quite high support needs. I don't think the autism spectrum is necessarily this ASD 1, 2, and 3 thing. I think it's sort of a separate sort of label that is based on what kind of functioning they need. Well, why did she go straight to pot? I think that they've had medications, as she said. I don't know what kind of medications they're giving him, because as far as I know, I don't think there's many. Like, I don't think you can get medications for autism, you know? Like, maybe things related to, like, the comorbidities, like depression and anxiety. Maybe something related to, like, mood stabilizing. Is that what they do? I haven't really looked into it, to be honest. Does anyone have any ideas? I do know, I have seen some research around, particularly around like oxytocin mediators. They did like a nasal spray, which apparently alleviated some of like the social symptoms that they had. Yeah, I did my exams on the old wacky backy. I also passed. Nice.
I'd want him being chemically restrained in a bed, being taken care of by strangers. Sorry. I had come across this little video clip of a young boy who...
Aaron says sometimes they use sedatives if there's aggression. Yeah, that's what I imagine. That's what I'm at. That's why what I thought, yeah.
Who was just repeatedly punching himself in the head.
11-year-old Alex Eccles is severely autistic. His self-destructive behavior brought on by...
And it caught my attention because it was something that Nate had done. His parents were talking about giving some kind of an oil. I was confused because it sounded like it was some kind of a marijuana derivative. And I was actually shocked and maybe even a little bit disgusted.
And after a few months of treatment, the Eccles say they saw a dramatic improvement.
Within just a few minutes of this boy taking the oil orally, he was smiling and he was calm and he wasn't hurting himself anymore. And I'm like, wait, what just happened there? I watched it a few more times.
This is definitely an interesting kind of thing, isn't it? Like, using medication. Like, even if it's something kind of, that a lot of people sort of tout as being quite beneficial to autistic people from other autistic adults, like, it's still a very strange thing to, like, medicate autism. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't really sit right with me. Like, they should certainly try more than one medication and watch how it responds. It's a lousy way to find out what works, but surely better than increasing doses of the same thing. It makes you chilled. I definitely self-prescribed pot, and I think I'm right about it, but it's not as good when I overdo it. Yeah, I mean, I think anything in excess of what you need is probably, like, not a good idea. But this, I mean, usually when medical stuff like this is done, there is usually, like, a prescribed dose, It's not, like, used for recreational purposes in that sense. But I mean, like, I think one of the arguments a lot of, like, activists for, like, cannabis use, like, even in a recreational setting, like, it doesn't lead to people increasing aggressiveness. Like, sometimes it can lead to, like, anxiety and paranoia, and I think among a select group of people, it can sort of initiate any sort of pre-existing schizo-related disorders. But yeah, I mean, let's keep watching.
Times, and I was completely shocked and desperate.
At that point, Jenny and her family just moved from Wisconsin to Missouri. 2 states where getting pot legally for really any reason is super difficult, but particularly medical cannabis to treat autism. Currently, only 12 states include autism as a qualifying condition. 5 other states in the District of Columbia are considered autism-friendly, meaning doctors can recommend medical cannabis for debilitating conditions. So that leaves 33 states where you can't access medical cannabis to treat autism at all.
I was raised in the Nancy Reagan just say no era.
Say no to...
I don't... Getting the kids stoned clearly work, which is worth something, I guess. I don't think it's kind of in that sense. I don't think that's the, like... I mean, I technically, yes, I suppose you're right, Paxman, but I just, it's the whole thing about medicating for autism. Like, I prefer if it was more about, like, medicating, like, anger issues or, like, something like that. If it's just, like, medicating autism, it seems a very strange way of talking about it. I suppose when it comes to legislation, perhaps it's a bit sort of more impactful to allow autistic people to receive said medication, but the language is just getting me.
No to drugs and say yes to life.
I would have never in my life considered this to be a medicine, but I basically told my husband we have to try that.
Like most illicit drugs, the scientific and medical research of marijuana has been challenging, but the tide appears to be turning. The first large-scale clinical trial is underway at Montefiore Medical Center in New York City, and it may be the key to unlocking access to treatment for children with autism nationwide. Dr. Eric Hollander is leading that study.
I've been involved in research developing new therapies, new treatments in autism spectrum disorders for about 30 years. And there's a big need to develop treatments for the core symptoms of autism.
This study focuses on a new compound called cannabidivarin, or CBDV. It's an extract from the cannabis plant similar to CBD. It doesn't include THC, the psychoactive drug that gets you high, and what Jenny uses to treat Nate. But it's the first step in studying cannabis to treat autism.
This particular cannabinoid has effects on some of the underlying mechanisms that we think are central to autism, the problem behaviors, disruptive behaviors, and also in some of the compulsive behaviors or repetitive behaviors or perseverative behaviors. So it gets at a key mechanism.
Yeah, I don't think we need treatments for repetitive behaviors, mate. It's a really weird video for me to watch because I don't agree with the premise, but I sort of, I think it's good to have an open mind when it comes to helping people, I take mood stabilizers, antidepressants, and anti-anxiety meds. I have low spotties but comorbid conditions. I don't think they are meds for autism. Exactly, that's what I'm talking about, Pieta. Hope I'm saying that right. Hello, Lexi. Okay, that's what I thought. I didn't think that oil got you high. I have to be honest, I was under the assumption that it was. I was under that assumption. If they had medical ganja on the NHS, I wouldn't say no. No, you can get it medically in the UK. You need to have first shown that medication does not work in treating you. However, yeah, it's interesting. I've been trying to work out what exactly these mechanisms of like challenging behavior that they're necessarily talking about, because I don't necessarily think that's like, it's the premise of treating autism that I don't agree with. Are they tackling from the angle of suppressing stimming and suppressing self-harm behaviors? Yeah, because if they're challenging it from the angle of tackling it from the angle of suppressing stimming, I'm not too happy about that, to be honest. Like, because I think the way that he's wording it is like they're trying to remove challenging behaviors in order to make the child sort of more amenable. But I think there's also an aspect of like improving the child's well-being as well, which I can agree with. I just don't think that saying treating autism is like necessarily the right way of wording it. Perhaps improving the life quality of an autistic person. That would probably be a better way of wording it. Cannabis helps me, not my addiction problem, rather alcohol. Interesting. Help me socialize and sleep. Bad sleep, but sleep. Yeah. I've heard stuff like that as well.
Mechanism that we think is important.
There is reason to be optimistic. This new CBDV-based drug is similar to one that's already been approved by the FDA to treat a severe form of epilepsy that shares some of the same symptoms that Dr. Hollander is studying. This new research could help cement what has largely been anecdotal support of using cannabis to treat autism. But while that research is ongoing, parents like Jenny are moving to states that have more lax marijuana laws. For Jenny and her family, that meant packing up everything and moving all the way across the country. That decision may sound extreme, but for Jenny and Nate, it's been worth it. Their lives have been transformed since first visiting a dispensary.
We got home and he took a hit immediately.
We got this, huh?
Okay.
And within
he's vaporizing.
not even 5 minutes, it was just like a light switch. He was happy and just kind of looking around like he had never seen the world in that way. And he was smiling and looking at me. And I just knew right away because nothing acted that quickly or that positively ever.
Jenny has learned a lot since moving her family out to California. There, she joined forces with fellow mom Rhonda to start the nonprofit Whole Plant Access for Autism. Now it's a team of moms dedicating their lives to helping other families navigate the challenges that come with getting cannabis for their autistic kids.
I feel like we get a lot of people that come to our booth. Someone in their lives has been touched by autism, and they don't know that this is an option for them. Oftentimes we get people that come to us after the event. They email us or they find us on social media and they want to learn. And that's kind of what we're.
Well, I really do want to highlight that I'm not necessarily like when I question like the aspect of treating autism, I'm not criticizing like the doctors or the actual like parent on that they're trying to like remove autism from their kid. I don't think that's not the angle that I'm trying to take. It's more like I suppose it's just the wording. Like if I'm being honest, like I'd prefer if it wasn't treating autism, probably like helping autistic people would probably be better. But the actual like initiative and what they're talking about is something that I definitely do agree with. I think that there should be access to stuff like that. Like I don't like, especially when it comes to what like CBD, CBD variants, like non-psychoactive stuff, like seems like a very silly thing to sort of deny people from having, if it really, really helps them improve their quality of life. Danielle says, Thomas Henley, I always feel like I say things on purpose, not in a mean way. People always take it as if I'm being rude, and they give me attitude. I feel like I did something wrong. Oh, do you mean now, Danielle? I mean, I don't feel... Does anyone else get treated like a child or told they look like a kid, and that's how old they are by strangers? I always did, and it gets hella annoying. It drives me nuts. Yeah, that's the infantilization, I think. Anti-epileptics are part of a treatment for BP. Are we sure he wasn't high? I don't know. It seemed to have a very sort of noticeable effect from what she was talking about.
We're about educating.
We decided to take a drive out to Joshua Tree. I had him vape and take an edible right before we left the house. He saw that I was taking pictures, and most of the other pictures that I've ever taken him in his life, it was kind of a vacant stare. He wouldn't really look, he wouldn't really smile. And he ran over in front of me and sat down. He sat there and he posed for a picture like everybody else would in a situation like that. And I'm like, that's it. That's basically his birth picture. You shouldn't have to go.
I feel like what they're actually treating here is just like generalized anxiety and overstimulation. It makes sense. Like perhaps someone might be a little bit less lucid if they are like constantly overstimulated and they have like that bodily sort of aching feeling of anxiety that you get with generalized anxiety. Like it definitely makes sense, 100%. I don't think it's necessarily making him less autistic, though. I think that's the wrong kind of characterization to make.
Go through the whole gamut of medications and side effects and long-term consequences of some of those side effects in order to get to it. Just look at cannabis as another tool in your tool belt to try.
Thanks for watching. For more dope science content, check out our website and subscribe to Freethink for more great videos every week.
Well, that was Freethink's Cannabis as a Natural Treatment for Autism. Definitely seems like a good sort of step in the right direction, I think, for improving the life quality of autistic people. I've heard like an almost overwhelming amount of positive regard, and also some people who have sort of negative regard for the use of it in terms of like improving life quality, sort of counteracting some of the common sort of comorbidities that autistic people can experience, particularly anxiety. Again, the wording, I have to go back to the wording. The wording of what they're actually doing, I think, could be improved. But I think the general sentiment of improving the life quality of individuals, I think, is a very good thing.